Hello and welcome to our channel. Recently, TB Joshua's name and legacy has been trending all over the world, following a recent documentary by the BBC on his ministry, with allegations of sexual misconduct, manipulation, and false miracles. The BBC took great lengths to prove their point that TB Joshua was not the man he claimed to be. The documentary, which featured a three-part series, had various witnesses testify and speak on what they know about the Nigerian preacher who passed away in 2021. The documentary by the BBC has been met with mixed reactions, but it seems as though the documentary didn't stir up the much needed energy it was intended, as most people weren't just buying into the allegations. In fact, many believed the stories circulated by the witnesses in the documentary as false, and another group of people testified to the fact that they have been healed by TB Joshua, and to that effect, it didn't make sense that he could have done all that he has been accused of doing. The circumstances surrounding TB Joshua are strange, with many supporting him and a good number criticizing him. Even while alive, TB Joshua was not a man who has been a stranger to controversy. Over the years of his ministry and time as the lead prophet of his church, the Synagogue Church of All Nations, he was always in the mouths of top men of God and some people who believed he was a sorcerer and a false prophet. Many of his pastor colleagues in Nigeria constantly criticized him and never wanted to associate with him publicly. In this video, we would look at the two sides of TB Joshua from testimonies of people who actually met him and interacted with him. We would explore the negatives and the positives. However, before that, we will take a look at who exactly was TB Joshua. Temitope Balogun Joshua was born on June 12, 1963 and passed away on June 5, 2021. He was a Nigerian charismatic pastor and televangelist. He was the leader and founder of the Synagogue Church of All Nations, also known as SCOAN. His early days began with a dose of mystery, as his mother carried him for more than 9 months in the womb. He was also known to be spiritually gifted from an early age, which perhaps explains his choice to be a prophet. According to TB Joshua himself, God called him right from his mother's womb, in quotes, a statement that does not sit well with many Christians in the country. TB Joshua was widely known across Africa and Latin America and had a large social media presence with over 6 million fans on Facebook. His YouTube channel, Emmanuel TV, had over 1 million subscribers and was the most viewed Christian ministry on the platform before the channel was suspended by YouTube in 2021 for alleged homophobic hate speech. During the course of his lifetime, TB Joshua was awarded various accolades, notably receiving the Officer of the Order of the Federal Republic, OFR, by the Nigerian government in 2008, and being voted the Yoruba Man of the Decade by a pan-Yoruba media outlet, Irohin Odua. TB Joshua was known for his wide and extensive humanitarian work. He travels to various countries in the world, and his ministry helped provide aid in millions of dollars to those in need. In Nigeria, thousands of students were recipients to various scholarship programs organized by his church. His philanthropy indeed endeared a lot of love and admiration for him in Nigeria, Africa, and beyond. TB Joshua has never been a man who has been liked by many. From the early days of his ministry, he has faced what can be called the worst persecution any preacher can face in Nigeria. He is even reputed to be the most criticized man of God in Nigeria, as many do not seem to agree with him. His style of ministration and his messages have often been described as demonic, and his miracles have been dismissed as being occultic and satanic. The mainstream evangelical movement in the country over the past 2 decades have been constantly suspicious as to the ways and methods of TB Joshua. Top Nigerian overseers have even called him out on their pulpit to flatly say that the man was not from God, despite the various miracles he performs. Pastor Chris Okotie described TB Joshua as a son of the devil, in quotes. Others who have criticized him in the past include Pastors Enoch Adeboye, David Oyedepo, Ayoritse Jafo, Paul Adefrasin, Pastor Ashimolowo Matthew, and Ted Haggard. The Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, rejected him, although a CAN delegation attended his funeral. and the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria often criticized him. Numerous evangelical and Pentecostal figures in Nigeria denounced Joshua as an impostor, an occult figure posing as an evangelical. In 2010, Cameroon's Foreign Minister Henry Eyebe Ayesi termed Joshua a son of the devil, pretending to be a man of God in quotes, and advised hundreds of Cameroonians not to take part in a planned pilgrimage to Lagos to visit him, where several others had left without accommodation. Rumors of a visit by TB Joshua to Zimbabwe in 2012 led to an intense national debate, culminating with pastors and politicians strongly objecting. In 2011, the BBC reported that at least 3 people in London with HIV died after they stopped taking life-saving drugs on the advice of evangelical Christian pastors. The HIV Prevention Charity African Health Policy Network, AHPN, believed that TB Joshua's church, the SCOAN, which maintained an office in Southwark, London, may be one of those involved in such practices. SCOAN responded by saying, "We do not ask people to stop taking their medication," end quote. The BBC interviewed a number of people for their documentary on TB Joshua. These people included Ajoke, who claimed to be her illegitimate daughter, gave their various experiences in TB Joshua's church. The BBC interviewed a number of people for their documentary on TB Joshua. These people, including Ajoke, who claimed to be her illegitimate daughter, gave their various experiences in TB Joshua's church. One of them was a man named Agomo Paul. Agomo Paul joined TB Joshua's church in 1995 and worked with TB Joshua from the early days of his ministry. And to back up these claims, clips of Paul Agomo as a young prophet in quotes could be seen hanging around TB Joshua. According to him, he was the second in command after TB Joshua. Agomo left TB Joshua's church after working there for 10 years in 2006, and he described TB Joshua as a genius manipulator, end quote. Agomo went on to further narrate his experiences in the church. Most of these experiences turned out to be very negative and critical of TB Joshua. Agomo claimed that those who seemed to be cured at the church were frequently paid to perform or exaggerate their symptoms before their supposed healing took place, and in some instances were drugged or medicated as part of the faith healing process. Some were falsely told that they had HIV and AIDS, but had made a recovery due to TB Joshua's praying for them. Back in 2009, Paul Agomo told his own part of the story in an interview with Lifeway magazine, where he mentioned that miracles being performed at the synagogue church were fake, and that he witnessed many mysterious deaths during his tenure as the second in command to Prophet TB Joshua, the general overseer of the synagogue. Despite leaving the church, Agomo claimed that he survived various assassination attempts on his life and went into hiding for more than 8 years prior to being contacted by the BBC for their 2024 investigative story. Paul Agomo's story is a bit perplexing. He wrote a book titled "Why I Left the Synagogue," end quote, which exposed the various things he experienced that made him question TB Joshua. The name mentioning on his book to a very large extent makes his story worth believing, but how do we reconcile the fact that there are various others who speak so well of TB Joshua? There are sides to every story. As the BBC investigation broke out and the various reactions were generated, some close TB Joshua disciples and spiritual sons began to speak up and accuse the BBC of making a false claim. One of such people amongst the numerous host of others was Pastor Jeremiah Omotofufeyin. Pastor Jeremiah, who also has a large following in Nigeria, with his church located in Warri, Nigeria, explained that the stories coming out against TB Joshua were, quote, "works of his enemies," end quote. He further emphasized that people should not be in a haste to judge and criticize TB Joshua. He pointed out that people wouldn't forget in a hurry the good works of philanthropy of the late prophet, referring to him as unmatched in Africa and a spiritual father. Aside Pastor Jeremiah praising TB Joshua, other famous people have come out to lend their support despite the allegations of the BBC. One of such people is Victor A.D., a singer and musician. He said that TB Joshua was instrumental in his healing of a skin disease condition. He further went on to say that his family are beneficiaries to the power of God moving in TB Joshua. Another person who spoke in support of TB Joshua was one of his spiritual sons, Apostle John Chi. After the documentary was released, John Chi said TB Joshua influenced his life positively and he learnt a lot from him that has helped his spiritual growth. The three-part investigative documentary done by the BBC also revealed how TB Joshua constantly abused and tortured his daughter, Ajoke. In the documentary, TB Joshua's disciples claimed that Ajoke was gotten outside lawful marriage and was subjected to a series of torture and humiliation by the late cleric, who viewed her existence as a big threat to his reputation as a man of God. Ajoke claimed that she never felt fatherly affection from the late pastor and that her father compelled her to be a disciple to ruin her life. She said in quotes, "It was very difficult to watch this man preach every Sunday, topics about love and mercy. They feel very strange coming from his lips. I stared myself in the mirror lots of times, so maybe I didn't look like him. Maybe. For as long as I can remember, I had been raised as TB Joshua's daughter." End quote. That kind of pain cannot be put into words. I feel like, maybe I really don't deserve to be alive. We are talking about years and years of abuse, consistent abuse that wasn't ending, she said. She added that other disciples also joined her father to compound the humiliation. She said in quotes, "The disciples were both brainwashed and enablers. Everybody was just acting based on commands like zombies. Nobody was questioning beyond fanatics. Where does your conscience come? How far can your conscience go without some form of accountability?" End quote. Any observer to the comment section of the BBC documentary would notice that despite the harmful reports on TB Joshua, many people still revere him and a greater number even find it difficult to believe this story as true. Many have also criticized the BBC for releasing the documentary just after TB Joshua's death, but the BBC mentioned that the documentary was already in the works when TB Joshua passed away in 2021. The reactions trailing the documentary are two-sided. On one side, many feel justified that the rumors circulating TB Joshua over the years have turned out to be true, and on the other camp, many simply cannot believe the allegations and are confident that TB Joshua couldn't have done such. However, in conclusion, the truth we can all see here is that TB Joshua actually impacted millions of lives globally. Perhaps no one matches with him when it comes to philanthropy in the country, but one thing I have learned from the scriptures and over the years is that no man can be trusted, only God can be. Till tomorrow, stories like this will always flood the social media space, as investigations into the private lives of famous individuals would never cease. The BBC documentary teaches that impact made today can be lost tomorrow over a silly mistake of yesterday. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. See you later.